Hi, welcome to Box on the Box Rock and Celluloid, Bot for short. I'm over Box. So I've got a random review for you today, and it's Here in the Now Frontier. This is Queensryche's sixth full album, obviously 7 if you count the EP, and this was released in 1997. So this comes at a very difficult time in Queensryche history. It comes at a difficult time for bands like Queensryche. Prior to this, they'd had the huge success with Empire going triple platinum, and then managed to go platinum with the Promised Land album, which I think is a strong record. You can see the review for that on my Our Box Guitar Tuition channel. But the reason I wanted to touch on this record is it's an interesting album. It shows the difficulties of the time, the difficulties Queensryche were in. It's problematic in many ways, and really I wanted to pick it apart and just look at what I think's good about it, but also how they maybe could have improved things a bit, why things went wrong, and so forth. Probably the main thing with this album that stands out is they got Peter Collins back in to produce it, which is a good move. But they went for a really gnarly, stripped down production style, which doesn't suit Queensryche. But it's weird, why get Peter Collins in to make a record that sounds like that when that's not what Peter Collins does. So I think that's one of the first port of calls. The other thing on this, the songwriting credits, the first track, Sign of the Times, Chris DeGarmo, Cruising S, Chris DeGarmo, Voice Inside, Chris DeGarmo, Hero, Chris DeGarmo, Miles Away, Chris DeGarmo, All I Want, Chris DeGarmo. So a lot of just Chris DeGarmo tracks. The other songs are Chris DeGarmo and Jeff Tate. Michael Wilton and Eddie Jackson only have one co-write. Actually, Eddie Jackson has two. So again, it's following that pattern of Queensryche albums, pretty much from Empire onwards, where it's just principally those two guys writing. Let's go through the tracks. It opens with what's probably the strongest track, or one of the strongest tracks on the album, Sign of the Times. This is a kind of catchy rocker, but I like it. Very simple riff, quite cool lyrics, and then it's got quite a cool kind of chorus breakdown. What I noticed listening to it again today, the master I've got from 2003 is probably not the best. Is the guitars are quite loud and quite up front, and Jeff Tate's vocals are sat back more. But you know, they could have done this more stripped down approach, but had still that polished sound, or more polished. The drums are very clanky, but I do like this track. Next track is Cuckoo's Nest. Again, I do like the chorus on this. I do like the song. I think it's this track that has a terrible guitar solo. I think it's maybe Chris DeGarmo. It's almost like deliberately they've done a gnarly guitar solo where it's got handling noise and it's off bends. But I'm just like, well, why do that? You know, I know like sort of Seattle bands and what's been happening in music do that, but it's not what Queensryche do. But I do like the track. Then you've got Get a Life. I don't like this track as much, but it is catchy. Again, this is probably the most sort of one of the most grungy riffs on the album. You know, it's that thing where if you didn't obviously you recognise Jeff Tate's voice, but if you didn't, you wouldn't think it was Queensryche. The Voice Inside, one of my favourite tracks on the album's next. Chris DeGarmo track. I do like this. But listening to it recently, I've realised how sluggish the tempo is. It's like dun 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 dun. I think that's a problem with the album as a whole. The tempos are so sluggish. Again, they're probably listening to Alice in Chains. Nothing wrong with Alice in Chains having slow tempos, that's the thing. But these songs, someone would really benefit from going up a few beats per minute, 3 BPM, 5 BPM. Not a lot, but it'll just put a bit of bounce in. Some People Fly. Again, this is quite a cool sort of acoustic ballad. You know, would fit on the Promised Land. More stripped down, DeGarmo Tate composition, 5:17. This is the longest track on the album. No, second longest, apologies. Again, it could just be that little bit quicker. Then you got Saved. My mate who did the thumbnail for this, Gary, I'm not on Facebook, Foley. He loves this song. He's always loved this. There's a great vocal from Tate on this. I don't love it, but it is good. Then you got You. Again, this is quite a catchy track. I think it's okay. And then Hero, one of the better tracks on the album, is next. This is a kind of slow, sort of a boom, dum, 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 kind of acoustic, a little bit of a slow funky groove. DeGarmo writes this, quite interesting lyrics, interesting vocal performance from Jeff Tate. Again, that tempo could be up, it could just bounce a bit more, miles away. Like the chorus on this, quite a lot of lyrics, DeGarmo track. The verses are kind of quite simple, as is the next track, Reach. This is the only song co-written by Michael Wilton on this album. And again, that was a problem moving forward for the right. Michael Wilton kind of withdrew from the writing. I don't think Michael Wilton's a guy who comes up with loads of parts or something. He always come up with good riffs. And when you go back in the history of Queensryche, it's always in there. It's okay, this track. Now the next track's probably, I think, the track that shows the problems in the band. If you read the sleeve notes on this album, it's a song called All I Want. It's a DeGarmo track. It's 4 minutes and 6, but Chris DeGarmo sings it. He presented it to the band. Jeff Tate was ambivalent about it. He was like, yeah, Chris, if you want to sing it, that's fine. I think your voice sounds good. That's interesting, but what's this doing on the album? It's actually a good track. It's kind of got a 70s singer-songwriter vibe, but it's not right for Queensryche. And of course, it doesn't sound like Queensryche because Chris DeGarmo's singing. It's a total anomaly. We know Chris DeGarmo's got a really good voice for backing vocals, and he has got a good voice. One thing I'll say is, like, when you see people singing backing vocals, really good backing vocals, it means they can take a lead vocal. It's just the tone of their voice, the sound of their voice isn't as, great as the great lead singers, but any good backing vocalist doing good backing vocals can take a lead vocal, and if you're going to do good backing vocals, you kind of need to be able to practice lead vocals, really. Digressing. So this track's not I like the track, it just shouldn't be on the album. Now you got Hit the Black. Listening to it recently, I could see how the album maybe actually needs this track. I don't think the track's great, but it's kind of a bit more up-tempo. This album's crying out for an up-tempo track. But if you go back to Promised Land and Empire, there's nothing up-tempo on those albums. If you remember on Mind Crime, you got The Needle Lies, Speak, Spreading the Disease, and then 156, Surgical Strike. You've got any number of up-tempo tracks with Queensryche, often co-written by Michael Wilton. But this is the closest album gets to it. It's got kind of effects on Jeff Tate's voice. You can see it's got that post sort of Seattle grunge influence on it. This is the one that's co-written by Eddie Jackson, but I think the album, kind of, although it's not a great track, kind of does need it. Then you got Anytime Anywhere. This song's 2 minutes 54. I mean, it's barely sketched out. It's a kind of Jeff Tate, DeGarmo Jackson Tate, I don't know. Jeff Tate's maybe written lyrics. He's like, yeah, you're really horny, I want you anytime, anywhere. It's kind of that post-Empire loved up lyric, but a bit kind of sexy, kind of a bit creepy. Just not a very good track. The album doesn't need it. And then the album finishes with Spool, track 14, which is a really good track. It's got a really kind of hypnotic, harmonic sort of verse, and then a really good classic Queensryche chorus. Queensryche always do, generally speaking, very strong finishing tracks. You remember the Q2K album after this, not a great album, but The Right Side of My Mind, a very good track. I really like this track, quite interesting lyrics, interesting spool, has 2 O's on the title. So the album really starts and finishes with the 2 best tracks, Sign of the Times and Spool, are really good tracks. A lot of people have been looking at the All Music 3% Chicago Tribune 3 stars, 2 stars, Collector's Guide to Heavy Metal, 8 out of 10. I was always struggling to give this any more than a 7. I'm going to give it a 6. I think what would have improved this album is, you're stripping down the songs, you're doing kind of more direct things, but have that Queensryche polish, at least have it as polished as Promised Land. Maybe the band should have done a heavier album. There's not much heaviness on this. Maybe they should have gone, we're going to do a polished sort of drop D tuning album that's taking a leaf from what's been going on in music, but have, Jess vocals to the fore. Tempo's already mentioned, but the problem with this is it's got too many tracks in it because they can't decide what kind of album they want to make. It's 57 minutes long. Lose Anytime Anywhere, Lose All I Want. That's 7 minutes. That'll get it out of 50 minutes. And you could probably lose a couple of other tracks, like say Hit the Black's not one of my favourite tracks at all, but it kind of needs an up-tempo track. I'd maybe get rid of You and Reach, possibly. Or certainly, I think I'd probably get rid of Reach, certainly. I think that would streamline the album. It would make it a bit more focused and get it over the more of the 7 out of 10. After this album, Queensryche rehearsed. They did like a gig in the desert. You read the sleeve notes of this album. Quite cool publicity photos. But he kind of got buried. Basically, what happened is EMI kind of went sort of tits up. You might not be aware. EMI had financial problems in the late 90s. I think at some point they got bought out by a hedge fund guy Hans. Got big into reissues. So Queensryche, sorry, itching. Queensryche got the money pulled from tour support, promotion, and it just kind of coughed and spluttered out. Then Christy Garmer left, and I've always understood that decision personally. Christy Garmer realised the band had peaked. They weren't going to do another Empire. They weren't going to do another Mindcrime, Rage for Order. The creative juices had gone, and like I know people rave about the Toddler Torre stuff, and there'll be people who like tracks they've done since Chris left, and the stuff I like, but the days are gone where you're going to get that album. Maybe with Todd, maybe they will pull it off. I hope they do, and they've done some good stuff. But that was the end of that era. It's a shame it went out with a whimper, but it's more indicative of the time that music in. The thing I hate about the 90s is the way that good bands were forced to change the sound. And it's like, or the fella had to wears, why couldn't, these bands coexist, with the what was happening in the Seattle scene and stuff. But it's just the way things went. But yeah, so that is the Here and the Now Frontier album. I should just mention quickly, this album actually sold about 330,000 copies in America, 270 on initial release. At the time, obviously that's no good. Queensryche get dropped. Bands would absolutely give their right hand. I can't remember the last time a metal band sold over 300,000 albums in America. I think the last Maiden album did, but sales had halved from what they'd sold before. Anyway, remember, share and subscribe. That's my random review of Queensryche's Here and the Now Frontier. I'll see you again soon. Thanks very much.